Well, reading the minutes, you have to feel that this is a sort of a dovish lean, and it supports Chairman Jay Powell's tone at the news conference following the June 27th meeting. Fed officials noted that some parts of the economy, notably housing, were starting to slow as a result of higher interest rates. Some supply chains were beginning to normalize. They also saw some tentative signs that labor markets were loosening. Remember, this was before the July jobs data were released. Inflation, though, they said, remained too high, and the balance of inflation risks was skewed to the upside. Quote, that meant participants judged moving to a restrictive stance of policy was required. And by moving 75 basis points for a second consecutive time, officials felt they were, quote, acting with resolve to lower inflation to 2% and anchor inflation expectations. Expectations had not become unmoored, but members worried that that would be an ongoing concern, along with uncertainties about the effects of Russia's war. Still, quote, participants judged that the stance of monetary policy tightened as the stance of monetary policy tightened further, it would likely become appropriate at some point to slow the pace of policy rate increases. In part, quote, the bulk of the effects on real activity had yet to be felt because of lags associated with the transmission of monetary policy. The effects of higher rates had not shown up yet in the economy. Lags work both ways, however, given the slowing in some sectors and the delay in rate impacts. Quote, many participants remarked that in view of the constantly changing nature of the economic environment, there was also a risk the committee could tighten the stance of policy by more than necessary. And that was something they said would impact their rate deliberations in the future. Guys?
Mike, the lagged effects, any mention here of QT that's really starting to ramp up in September and the lagged effects of that as well?
Yeah, there was nothing about that, actually, in the minutes this time. It had only just begun a week or two before this last meeting, so they had no measurement of how it was going to go or how it was proceeding. So we'll have to look to the next meeting for any evaluations of that.
The next meeting, definitely highly anticipated. But when you look at what was said in the minutes, how does this compare to the hawkish expectations that were or were not there from the market? Does it stack up?
Well, I think we're going to have to see how the markets react, but to me, it was more dovish than hawkish. The committee spent a lot of time talking about areas in which they saw interest rates beginning to have an effect and some slowing of the economy taking place along with the loosening of the labor market. It's more a question of how fast that would happen, and that's why they had some concerns about the lags of policy and the possibility of going too far.
For now, yields still remain higher. For now, stocks remain lower, Mike. So actually a bit of a muted market reaction to all of this. It really is notable that they're worried about the perception that they're not tough on inflation. Do you think that they really realize they have to really vocalize the way in which they're determined front and center to tackle inflation rather than worry about unemployment?
Yeah, when I read the phrase in the minutes that they felt that they were acting with resolve, I felt that was kind of written for the general public and the markets to understand their view of inflation, that they are going to be tough on it. So they do want to make it clear. I think the market muted reaction probably has to do with the fact that this was in June, and at the time there was nothing that we knew about what was going on. This was the end of July, that we hadn't gotten those payroll reports yet, and we hadn't gotten the inflation numbers that had fallen. So they didn't have the same picture of the economy that the markets have today.